Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. Thank you also to those who are seeing us through LinkedIn. This event will be recorded. My name is Raquel Peula. I'm the Outreach and Admissions Director at UIC Barcelona. Today, I want to give special thanks to one new member of our team, Carlota Filiol, who has organized this event. Thank you, Carlota, and welcome. And I wanted to say this is a special year for us. This is our 25th anniversary. Here at UIC Barcelona, we host more than 8,500 students. 32% are international. And maybe this percentage doesn't give you an idea, but if I tell you that the average in any Spanish university is at 9%, that tells you something, right? We are international. So hence, this talk in English. The goal for today is that you can take something valuable home, something to think about, something to reflect upon, something to remember. And that's the task of Pedro today, not to put pressure on you, Pedro. Pedro Diaz-Ridao is an international speaker, it's a consultant, it's a professor in leadership and management. He has trained more than 100 teams to make them achieve their goals, to foster their talent through every industry, technology, education, of course, sports, healthcare. So we are lucky to have him here. He has also coached some CEOs, managers, and entrepreneurs to help them to become better leaders. And that's actually the name of his new book, New Leaders, Nuevos Líderes in Spanish. And in that book, he talks about 8 different skills that help us to get to motion, to become better leaders. But Pedro has something that we really value in this university, which is a social spirit. So he was awarded the Young Entrepreneurship, Social Entrepreneurship Award in 2010, if I remember correctly. And what he did is to fight homelessness through sports. He also has a lot of initiatives helping athletes to go to their new career path after finishing of being like a professional in sports. And if that's not enough, he has a PhD, cum laude, with a focus, of course, in leadership and management. So thank you, Pedro, for being here today, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Raquel. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Well, I even got a round of applause, which I wasn't expecting. So thank you so much. Thanks a lot for being here today, both live in person and also, of course, if you're watching from home with the warmth of your maybe coffee that you're drinking, you're welcome as well. Thanks for being selfish today, healthy selfish as I call it. Selfish because you decided to be here today, listening to somebody instead of doing something else, which I'm sure you'll have to do after the talk, okay? This is the difference between being selfish, which I believe is something healthy, and being egocentric. An egocentric person just thinks they're the center of the world. But a healthy, selfish person believes that the best way to impact others is to impact in yourself better, and do it today. So thank you so much for this. We have a big topic, speaking about the best version. And first of all, there's one word we're going to talk about, which is skills. So we're going to put them to practice today. I don't know if you have paper next to you. If you do, maybe you will use it. I'm just guessing, okay, there. Maybe somebody can help you with some paper for later, we will see. But I'm leaving you this here, so we have a little task today, because we're also here to practice. We're also here to train and to learn. When we think of skills, let me show you probably what I mean by skills with a picture. This is me and my son. Well, I'm the one in blue, by the way, in case you couldn't tell the difference. And this is my eldest son. He was 3 at the time. He's 5 now. I'm passionate about bringing skills to people. Of course, I have to do that at home too. And my oldest son, whose name is Hugo, I'm trying to give him the best skills that I can, as a father, of course, as a parent. And when I talk about skills, I'm not talking about, for instance, the ability to influence others, which will be great. I'm talking about basic skills for life. And there are 3 basic skills. Number 1 is communication. I want him to be a good communicator. But being a good communicator is not getting on a stage and speaking well in public. Being a good communicator is the ability that we have to speak to people that think differently from us. Okay? In a world which becomes more polarized, we need to understand and to talk about differences. So the ability that we have to talk and understand some people that might have different views from us still find common ground. That's number 1. Second skill has to do with decision making. I want my kids and I want the people around me to practice decision making. Every time that we make a decision, deciding means choosing, and choosing means renouncing. So you chose to be here today, right? And you renounced to be somewhere else. We all make constant decisions. And the third one is critical thinking. The fact that somebody comes on a stage and tells you things doesn't mean that they're true, okay? It means it's their truth. So questioning everything before embracing an idea, okay? This is why universities become so important. This is the heart of critical thinking. The ability that we have to get thoughts from different people and create our own thoughts. With these 3 skills, we have a meta competence, a meta skill called responsibility. Okay? We want to have students that are responsible. Why? Because you don't need to remind them that the deadline is Friday. They will know, okay? And with somebody who's responsible, you don't even need to motivate them. They find their inner motivation. Let's dissect a little bit these skills, and I have a question for you. First question is, what brings the best version of you, right? Of course, that was the title of the talk, so I had to ask the question. But I think the question is wrongly addressed. Yeah. It was a title, yet I think we can improve it. So let's shake it a little bit, okay? Let's see how we can make it better. I think probably this would be a better question. What are you doing when you are at your best? If you think of moments, we could call them the moment of flow. What brings the best of you is usually when you're doing something that actually you believe, oh, I'm at my best doing this, okay? Well, it's taken me more than 20 years to realize, to really figure out when I'm doing my best. And it's basically when I'm sharing thoughts with people, like right now. And also, of course, when I'm in a room trying to help others build their talent. This is me giving a workshop to athletes. There we have all range of athletes, from professional athletes that play in Real Madrid, to give an example, to amateur athletes that play maybe paddle, and they have to cover their expenses. But they all have one thing in common. They are committed to their learning. One of them actually was a football player, called me once and said, Pedro, I'm sorry I can't attend the workshop today. And I said, okay, don't worry. Because he was practicing, he had a training session, and he said, I know this meant a lot for you. And I was like, oh. So I replied, thank you, I hope it also meant a lot for you. Okay? The fact that we are in a place receiving a talk doesn't mean that we're learning. Okay, we need to put more things to that. We need to do active learning. So we're gonna practice it today. Then, big question here. What is the number 1 skill that we need to develop our talent? And I'm gonna ask the question. So first I'm gonna use some of the people that are here. So what would you say is the number 1 skill to develop our talent? Let's hear from maybe the first row so I can hear it. Let's say, what would you say, for instance? Okay, the ability to learn. So people are not hiring us for how much we know, which of course they do, but for how fast we're able to learn. That's one thing. We call that learnability. We also call it lifelong learning. When a student comes to me and says, oh, I'm graduating this year, I'm not going back to university, and I'm like, oh, you didn't get a thing. Yes, of course, maybe you don't do another degree, right? But don't mix training with learning. Right? Learning is always going to be with you, or I hope at least. That could be one example. Anybody has another one? Yeah? Communication skills. Okay, that would be a very important one, of course. What else? Maybe a third one? Let's see who gets the iPad today. Humility, okay, a big one, okay? And those three are gonna be present, although, but to be humble, right? To be able to keep learning, all right? And what was the one we said here? And to communicate, I think I need something before that. There's a prior step, okay? And I'm not saying this, research says it, and it's called self-awareness, okay? Why is that? Think about that. There have been hundreds, thousands studies on leadership. I had to read more than 400 papers for my PhD, and I loved it. It was one of the most beautiful things that I did. To read and to come up with one conclusion. Nobody agrees. Every study contradicts the previous one. I think that's why leadership is so interesting, because a good leadership practice that have to do with talent in the 20th century might take us to jail now, okay? Leadership and talent, they age very badly. They have to be constantly renewing, as we said. Why self-awareness, and what is that? Let me give it, first, let's talk about one element. First is the ability that we have to keep our eyes wide open. Self-awareness is basically understanding that I'm not as handsome as the picture that you can see on my Instagram, which I have less gray hair than now, okay? And I'm not as ugly as the picture that you can see on my ID or my passport, which I look really like a, you don't wanna know. But it's me. I can't deny that it's the same person. So think of a coin. We have that coin, this is our talent, and we have two sides, side A and side B. The sooner that I discover both sides of the coin, the better that I will reach, and the faster that I reach my talent. So it is understanding that when I say eyes wide open, I mean I can know myself better by looking around campus and seeing opportunities. There are lots of opportunities here. I was at University of Granada in Spain doing my degree, and I was walking and I saw many ads offering scholarships. So I applied to every single thing that I got. And I did 3 Erasmus. You know, only 1 official and 2 that I just created because I saw that there was an offer there and I just applied. And some people said, how did you get, for instance, to go to UC Berkeley? Not because I was the smartest, but because I saw an ad and I believed that I could maybe apply and get there. I applied for University of California, and there was a list of campuses, and they said, well, the person working at the office, don't apply for Berkeley because they're not going to give it to you. It's better to try and secure something. So why don't you apply to another campus? You know that University of California has 9 campuses, or campi. So I applied, and I said, wait, but my dream is actually to go to Berkeley. I'm just going to give it a try. And I tried, and I was lucky. I don't know why, but I was not that lucky. They were given 5 scholarships that were paid and 5 more that were unpaid. Guess which number I was? Number 6. So I went there, and then I had to pay for most of the things except the fees. But actually, paying for everything made me be more alert. I had to work. I ended up working for the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, you know, a foreigner working for the government. I got to do amazing things that now I can share with my friends. Why do I connect this with self-awareness? Because actually, I discovered my strengths there through exposing my weaknesses. I was in class, I had 7 Nobel Prize winners in the building, and I said, what am I doing here? I thought I was a fraud. I looked at the people, students, and I thought, I'm really stupid here, you know, I'm really dumb. And they laughed, but I really believed that. And let me talk to you about something, imposter syndrome. That's what I felt, and that's what I still feel sometimes when I get on a stage. What is imposter syndrome? Is when your level of competence is much higher than your level of self-confidence. What is the opposite syndrome? I call it the brother-in-law syndrome. Síndrome del cuñado, you know? The brother-in-law is when your self-confidence is much higher than your ability, right? Than your competence. This helped me to understand that I did have some strengths that were essential for my future career. One of them was learning languages, okay? This is a very international university, and being in an international environment opened most doors for me. The first speech that I gave was because they needed somebody that spoke English, not because I was the best. The second speech that I gave, that was in Mexico, the first international, was because the main speaker got sick. I was not the first option, yet that helped me to know myself better. What we see here, and I share with a quote, is that the process of learning and developing yourself is not an easy one. Why? Because you start knowing those little things that you don't like about you. And also, you start knowing those great things that maybe you didn't know that you had. This is the magic of self-awareness. And this is why it is the #1 skill. And I'm not saying this, many studies prove this. Okay? So in order to know myself, I have to, go through this uncomfortable yet beautiful path. I'm going to bring you one example here in the name of Misty Copeland. Maybe you don't know her. She's quite famous in the US. And she had a similar situation that I lived when I moved to Madrid. I'm from a little town in Almeria in the southeast of Spain. So I had a dream of working in sports, working in Madrid. And then I got there and I gave many, many, many letters to different companies. 25. Back in the day, it was a real letter, that you sent, your CV. And I got one response back. And the only response back that I got was from Real Madrid, which was a place where I was dreaming of working. You like sports, you like international environments. It's one big entity. So they sent me a letter saying, no, thank you. So no, but I didn't get the job. And I had to wait 3 years in order to work with the team in a beautiful project that was also around education, training, basically, the future leaders in the area of sports. She got a similar letter, not from a sports team, but from the National Ballet of the US. So I'm going to show you the video so you can hear what message they gave her with the reasons why they were not accepting her application to the academy. Let's hear it.
Dear candidate, unfortunately, you have not been accepted. You lack the right feet, turnout, torso length, and bust for ballet. And at 13, you are too old to be considered.
So can anybody share some of the reasons they gave her? She was too old. Yep. She didn't have the right body for ballet. Do you imagine they tell you that you're too old at 13? I still remember the first time they told me, that, Señor, they called me Señor on the street. I was like, me? Señor, of course, I really got offended. And then, of course, I didn't realize that at some point I was going to become a señor, right? But they even said, well, your body, she has too much muscle, basically. And also, they didn't say that they were not accepting her because she was African-American, because they didn't want to have trouble. But it is the first person, she was the first person to ever join a ballet academy in the US that was not white, okay? When we are a minority, understanding and also knowing ourselves becomes a challenge. As you saw, she is African-American, but she's not super white or super black. So guess what? When she was little, she didn't fit anywhere because black people thought she was white people thought she was black. So she felt she didn't have nowhere to belong. And it took many years for her to understand that. She was seeing some weakness in her personality, and then she understood that it was not a weakness, it could also be a strength because she was unique in that sense. For instance, having so much strength as a ballerina. Did you see here in the bottom, she became the soloist ballerina, which means she's the one that makes the most technically difficult exercises within ballet. You never turn a weakness into a strength, okay? But sometimes there are weaknesses when we are young that we thought they were weaknesses and they're not. Okay, they could be strengths. For instance, maybe I believed that I'm not very masculine because my voice isn't like a radio commentator, but maybe I can have a lot of empathy because I'm able to connect with different people. So what you think is a weakness can actually turn a strength because it was never a weakness in the first place. Another element here is the notion of talent, okay? So a question to you is, think about how you define talent. Think about the ingredients. If you were to cook something, okay, a dish called talent, what ingredients would you put? Okay, anybody? Think about it. If you're at home, think about that too. You can write them down too. So one of them is discipline, okay? Usually consistency, discipline beats intensity. If you're able to do something that is not super, super good, but you do it consistently, the odds for you to reach and to learn and to grow are much higher. For instance, it could be starting a blog. You know, it's tedious, but if you're consistent, okay, when you realize you have a lot written and a lot published, okay? Anybody has another ingredient? Okay, the ability for sure, okay? And some of these sometimes we believe is innate. Let me show you 3 elements for me that are essential. We spoke about 2 already. Number 1 is here, okay, that's where the ability lies, is the capacity that I have, the knowledge, the aptitudes, okay? How much I know. For instance, has anybody here chosen your IQ? How smart you are? You didn't choose the brain, you chose how to develop it. We're talking about usually 50 to 80% of our brain, okay, the IQ is inherited. But we can make it better about 20, 30%. So if you have kids in the future, they will inherit the one that you inherited plus that 30% more that you can get in your life. For instance, doing things like the ones you're doing. Then, okay, this is, for instance, the bodies, okay? We don't choose our body either, okay? The next one has to do with the work ethics. Sometimes we say, oh, he was very talented, but that but always follows by this. They lack effort, work ethics. In English, they say that there are no people beyond the extra mile. You run a race, it's a 10K, you don't find a lot of people running more. So if you're able to do just a little bit more of the rest, this is gonna really have visibility, okay? And there's one element that nobody talked about, which is this. It's the resources. We never have the resources we want. I never met anybody that said, oh, you know, I have the resources I want. But you can do the best you can with the resources that you have, okay? Think about this. This is the power of the context. So imagine, for instance, okay, if now that we are in Barcelona, Messi, as an amazing player, do you imagine his coach telling him, oh, you are gonna be a left back? Think about this. Or you are gonna be even a goalie. How would he become? Right? Look, he's not a bad goalie. That's him. Okay? We know he will never have a career as a goalie, right? Because his body, his ability was not meant for that. There were coaches, there were people that were able to identify that talent. So the question to you is, are you in the right context to develop that talent, to develop all those skills? Being in the right context can be many things. It could be being at UIC. It could also be being in my department, but also which functions, which skills, what actions am I putting into practice? It's not a question of changing the workplace. It is about understanding where I can impact others better. For instance, if you put me in an office to work 9 to 6 without talking to anybody, I die like a flower. That's just not me. Okay, I need people in my life because that gives me the energy. And I don't mind to making efforts when I have that ingredient. So think of Alexia Putellas also receiving 2 Ballon d'Ors, but she also received that because she was in a club where they can win things and she can learn from others. Somebody there said humility. What's humility here? It's the ability that I have to learn from anyone about anything in any given moment. That's humility. The ability to constantly learn. So good question and good news for you. If you know what you're good at and you are in the right context to develop your skills, the only thing left is the commitment, and is the only element that depends 100% on you. The other 2 always depend on outside. For instance, did you choose to be born where you were? No. A lot of people would die to be here today in this university, right? Either studying or working, but they can't, right? The context matters a lot, and we do have an impact on changing the context. I know many of you moved to Barcelona from other cities, from other countries. That was also a big change you did to develop your talent. Another element is coherence. Let's talk about that. We need two things here. We need capacity and we need coherence, right? Why those two things? First, we need capacity because the first thing that people value in you is how good you do things, how well you do them, okay? And this is way more important than motivation or attitude. Think about that. Would you get on a plane? I came from Madrid this morning. Would you get on a plane with a pilot that has a lot of attitude but doesn't have a license? No, but you never ask for the license, right? You trust that they have a proper, updated pilot license. And by the way, in the pandemic, many flights got canceled, and those pilots, you know what they had to do? Get in the simulator to not lose their license. Skills get outdated very fast. We have to keep working on that. So how do we practice coherence? Let's make a little test. I'm gonna ask you to, whether you're here or watching from home, put your hand up. I know if you're home, do it because nobody's gonna see you. You're not gonna be ridiculous, but you have to do it if you're in the room too. So put your right hand up in the air, right there. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna ask you to do what I say, if you don't mind. Okay, you ready? All right, I still see, there we go. Okay, so put your hand on your cheek, okay? Okay, so I have a question. Where is your cheek? People, where's your cheek? I thought the cheek was here. What did just happen? Okay, you see, being coherent basically is the fact that people don't listen to what you say. People listen to what you do. It is the behavior. You know when we say to lead by example? That's this. People are gonna listen to me once. The rest of the time, they listen to what I do. I tell you, come back, be punctual. And I say it a lot, but I'm not practicing it. What would you believe? That it's not important to me. Ability and coherence are difficult because coherence is basically how I shorten the gap between what I say and what I do. I talk to a lot of leaders about the importance of rest, sleep. And you know what I did? Last night, I slept 4 hours to come here. And I'm like, Pedro, you should learn what you preach, okay? So another element, and we mentioned that, to never stop learning. Let's dissect this in a few elements. Here we have two people. You know one of them, you don't know the other one, right? So Albert Einstein, of course, the one with the crazy hair, and this is one of his university professors. He had 3 big references at the university. This is one of them. And he was able to create the theory of relativity because of his 3 professors. You know why? Because Einstein was humble enough to go and ask for help. He was stuck in the theory. He didn't know geometry. He was not good in math. And his 3 teachers gave him the vision of saying, hey, you better think about this from a geometry and math perspective. He was humble to raise his hand and say, you know what? I need your help. So the ability to learn is always to raise your hand and say, I need help. This is a big social skill too. So how do we practice learning and how do we become that best version of ourselves? 3 steps here. Step number 1 is the most difficult one, to practice attention. Attention is the purest form of generosity. So you are now paying attention, but some of you have notifications on your phones now. Some of you are maybe multitasking. And yes, humans can multitask, not more than 2 things. And never multitask if one of those 2 tasks involves talking to somebody. Oh yeah, sure, go ahead, keep telling me, no, I'm with you. No, you're not with me. Have you ever talked to somebody that is physically present, but you know they're not there with you? Think about that. But it was never you, right? It was somebody else. And then they look even above your head. You're not like, their eyes are even thinking of something else. That is normal. We're humans. When that happens, I have to go back and say, hey, Pedro, come back again, focus on the conversation. The biggest generosity that you can give to the people around you is to pay attention to them. It is not a question of time. We're not in the era of time management. We're in the era of attention management. Technology, phones help us a lot, but they do also steal every single minute of our attention, and that's a big challenge. If I'm strong enough, I cannot hear my notifications. But if you're weak like me, I just put my phone in airplane mode because I know I'm just too weak and I'm going to see them, okay? When we have that, when we gain consciousness about this, The second point is willpower. It is not motivation, okay? We don't need motivation to learn. We need willpower, okay? It's like going to the gym. I don't need to be motivated to go to the gym. Even now in January, I can pay the whole year. Look how motivated I am. I pay for the whole year because I get a promotion. But that's useless. What do you need? You need willpower. You need to wake up on January 7th when it's raining or snowing and actually go to the gym. Jose Antonio Marina, one of the best educators that we have in our country, says that willpower is smart motivation. It is the motivation we have that we address that really in an intelligent way. Think about a candle. Motivation is the light, is the fire. But willpower is actually what makes that candle still stay lit. Okay? Think about that. It's the energy, it's the fuel. Okay? So when we have that, what is left? The third element is actually something that this person is going to share with us. That is Unai Emery. It's a football coach. He has coached some of the biggest teams in the world, and one of them being PSG, the French team. And let's see something he had to face when he moved from a different club to this new culture. I wrote about him and also Pep Guardiola in my book, Better Leaders, about people that were always exposing and working in this uncomfortable setting. So he goes to France, and the first thing he decides is to address the press conference in French. So let's see how that went.
C'est très important la concurrence. C'est important des bons joueurs pour position. Et après, c'est blessé, c'est suspendu, c'est qui est le joueur qui est meilleur pour jouer. C'est pour je veux une équipe plus être compétitif. Avec la concurrence, qui est meilleur, c'est le meilleur pour cette joueur. Ah, si il est un peu repos parce qu'il est avec la canne, et l'autre, il va jouer. Ah oui, ah, si, qui je préfère? Ok, je veux que les deux joueurs sont très motivés, très avec l'enthousiasme, très avec l'intensité. Bien, parfait, je vais dire, à jouer, c'est énervé un peu, normal, c'est mieux qu'il est énervé. S'il n'est pas énervé, se relaxe. Non, tu es énervé. Avec moi, oui, c'est bon. Parce que si tu es énervé, quand tu vas jouer, tu as la responsabilité de faire la démonstration avec moi que tu es énervé avec la raison. Que si tu joues, tu vas jouer bien. Si tu vas jouer bien, tu vas dire pourquoi tu es énervé si après tu ne vas jouer bien. Ah, c'est la responsabilité, mais c'est bon, c'est très bon. Je fais. Et c'est comme normalement la concurrence est mieux et l'équipe c'est mieux.
Well, I think it's pretty clear, right? I don't need to explain any further. Did you see the face of his interpreter? He was really struggling. He's like, oh my, what am I going to do now? I'm not showing this video, of course, to laugh at him. It's a funny video. And there are even funnier videos of him speaking English. You can see he became a meme in the UK with the English he has. The thing about what I value about him is that he does not care what people think. Okay? It was not a message to the people. It was a message to the players. Say, hey, if I can learn French enough to address here, right? If I can venture, you can also learn the things that I'm bringing to you. So this is self-awareness, the ability that I have to expose myself in public, laugh about myself, or continue growing, okay? But we're going to practice it a little bit. Anybody here speaks a little bit of French? Okay, alors on a deux personnes. Alors, tu vas venir, yeah, Mons? Yeah, Fonce? OK, round of applause, Fonce. Donc, s'il vous plaît. Alors, on va changer la langue. On va le faire en français un petit peu. So, s'il vous plaît. OK, quel est votre nom? Monica. Monica, how's your heart rate right now? How's the heart rate? Did it go up? Did it stay? Easy? OK. You know why I brought you here?
No.
Oh, because you just won a book. So this is a big round of applause for her. That was easy, okay? So sometimes, you decided to raise your hand. You didn't have to. And I know that maybe some people here do speak French, but you decided, you know what, I'm not going to raise my hand because I don't want to be exposed, okay? We should never expose people, never. Okay? And I try to never expose people in my workshops or in my talks, but I do try to keep people uncomfortable, right? I haven't met many teams that learn being comfortable, right? So what is to be uncomfortable is to, face uncertainty. Monica came here not knowing what was going to happen. It could be a test, it could be something. And that's the thing. It is about the fear of the unknown, of what's coming. And then you realize that sometimes when you raise your hand, good things can happen, okay? Sorry, it was not an iPad, but I couldn't afford the budget, Maybe we'll talk about that for next year, okay? So what do I value about him? This is action. That is what we need to actually stand up and come. As I say here, the learning process is not finished just when we acquire knowledge. Think about that. When is that completely finished? When we apply the knowledge. So think about this. They say the best way to learn something is what? To teach it, right? What could you be teaching? If you're a student now, sooner than later, you will be here. Maybe you'll be in a room. Maybe you will not become a professor, or maybe yes, but you will certainly become a great teacher and a great mentor to the people around you, okay? Leaders are mentors. Leaders are teachers. And leaders create new leaders. It's not about having followers. It's about empowering people to continue learning. So if I have attention, if I train my willpower, okay, and that's not an easy task, okay? My mother cooked for me for all my life. I know it doesn't seem like I eat a lot, but I do. And I don't know if she was motivated when she was cooking. She never told me, but I know that she always cooked. And because she had the willpower to cook, I said, you know what, Mom, I love this meal. Motivation is always a consequence of willpower, never a cause. And when you do that and you're able to move to action, it is by always applying those learnings, those skills that you had. I met this author here, which some of you will know, Daniel Pink. He has the third most watched TED Talk. And I sent him an email last summer, and I said, I have just translated my book. It is being published in English. I would love to hear your thoughts. Out of the blue, it was my birthday, July 28th, in case you want to send me an email, okay? Or an iPad. And I sent him an email on his website, on the form. I didn't have any connection. And I said, this is my book. I would love to hear your thoughts. He answered to me 3 hours later, and he said, okay, how can I help you? Have you watched New Amsterdam, the show? How can I help you? He offered help. This is what the doctor says in the show. And he said, when do you need my feedback? When? Like this. And he gave me 3 options. And I chose one deadline, of course, the latest, because I felt that was too much. And then he did it. He wrote a testimonial in the book, which is something I could never dream of. You need to have a little bit of even naivete and, of course, self-confidence to wake up and think that somebody is going to answer. But on a normal day, I will never dare to do this. This was a big piece of learning for me because usually when you're working, you don't have time to write. Sometimes you don't even have time to read. So I learned that in the small moments, it is when I could get the most of it. Every time that I was waiting at the doctor's office, maybe riding the metro, I would write notes, and 65% of that book was written in those moments. When you're killing time. So you can play Candy Crush, or you can also, which is totally fine, or you can also put your thoughts somewhere in paper, okay? Writing a blog also helped me to master and to practice the skill of writing. And now, for instance, if I have to write something, I can do it much quicker than I could before. And learning isn't easy. I went back to college, studying psychology now, because usually it's very important for my job. And that involves me waking up 6 a.m. every day to watch the recorded class from the day before, okay? Nobody's forcing me. I don't need it, but I believe that it's part of the essence. As I say here in the Spanish version, to become better leaders is the ability that we have to maximize the opportunities of the present and connect them with future opportunities. It is that dance that we do. How do we play this dance? Okay, we're going to do it by, of course, practicing it. So, no, I'm not going to take anybody here, but I'm going to ask you if you have papers. Do you have some paper? So I'm going to ask some of our friends, thanks a lot from admissions and events, to hand you some papers because I do want you to practice it. If you're home, grab a piece of paper. Well, I'm sure you already have it, right? Because you are writing, sure. and a pen if you have it, all right? If not, you can always borrow somebody else's, okay? I think I might have a couple of pens. Does anybody need a pen? Probably. I came well prepared. Let's see. I have a couple over here. You do? Okay, so you say you really want to learn, but nobody brings a pen, right? There you go. Anybody here? Oh, you have there? Okay, great. Okay, here, there we go. I'm gonna throw it over here. Oh, there it goes. Thank you. You can share it, okay, if need be. And of course, if you're home, make use of it. So I'm going to ask you, we're gonna practice learning. We're gonna do a little test now. It's not gonna be a French or English test. It's gonna be a different one, okay? So I'm gonna ask each of you, once you have the paper, to put it as you're doing on your lap or somewhere you can actually do what I'm going to ask, which is to draw. And I have a little test, and some of you are thinking, oh my. Well, is that a weakness or is it a strength? Well, this is called revenge because I've always failed at drawing when I was in high school. That was my weakest link. So this is my revenge now, to ask everybody to draw. But it's okay, don't worry, you're gonna make it. It's very simple. I'm gonna ask you to draw, you ready? A 10-euro note, a 10-euro bill, a note. Okay, a 10-euro note, un billete de 10 euros. You heard right. Yep, so you can't Google it, you can't look at the neighbor, you have to do it out of your memory. What do you remember from a 10-euro note? Okay? Let's see. I'm gonna give you about 50 seconds. Okay? And remember, it is an individual task, okay? Let's see. As you do it, you're thinking, okay, I was watching the other day, there was an event, there was a round table and in the US, and one of the participants said something that I believe is really interesting. He said he believed that exams should change in the future. They should be open book, even your phone should be there, and it would be about writing and also including references, sources in that exam. So it is because in real life, basically you can have access to a lot of information. Before, the way they did was they control us by taking away information from us, right, in the past. Now, how do they control us? By intoxicating us with information, with false information. So the ability to be able to learn, find the proper resources and put them in written in different lengths, that's a big skill. How to write a one-page statement, a one paragraph, and even one sentence for the same topic. That could be an exam in the future, right? So have you finished? You got it? Okay, so you can now show that note to your neighbors. If you're at home, okay, you have to wait for it. Bear with me. Okay. Anybody has a note that could actually be real? Okay. I'm going to show you the note. Okay. Ready? So here you have. So I'm going to do, now you're doing a double check. So I'm going to ask you to raise your hand, okay? Even if you're home and you can write comments, you can also do it in the comments. So raise your hand if you drew the number 10, okay? So here, nobody's from ESO or, no, of course, I did half ESO and half, bachiller, so I did like a half of it. So that's the basic one. But who, for instance, drew the bridge, the arc? The aqueduct. Some, okay. Anybody this gate? Also. And this is like the top question. Did anybody write euro in Greek? Oh my, okay, there we go. Okay, so we just ran a very fast experiment. Think about this. Nobody here, absolutely nobody, got everything right. Nobody. I don't know if at home, because I can't see it, but I doubt that you did. However, if we put all of us together, we all got it right. This is called collective intelligence. It is not when we just add the sum of the parts, it's when we multiply the effect. Okay? What is the opposite of collective intelligence? It's called groupthink. It is when we do some brainstorming session, we ask the first person, they say something, and that contaminates everybody else's thoughts. Brainstorming should always be individual first. If you have to meet with your team for a project, never meet with the team to think together. Never. You have to get to that meeting with previous thoughts already. Nobody gets to a meeting without thinking previously. We should not, right? This is why we can create collective intelligence, okay? When we put individual thoughts together. So, and congratulations for the practice. And by the way, I mentioned here before, there we go, right here, that the fact that you saw a note many, many times in your life doesn't mean that you learn it, even, of course, that you remember or learned, okay? We learn through 4 ways, okay? We learn through the memory. We learn with memory, okay? This is the most difficult one. We learn with iterations. When we iterate, when we try things, right? You do something, they give you feedback, and then you improve. We learn with iterations. We learn with schemes, okay? Schemes are ways that we have picture frameworks of behavior. For instance, nobody here came naked, but maybe somebody's watching naked from home. You can't guarantee. And why is that? Because if I'm home, I can be in my pajamas, or as I call it, I can be working in hybrid mode. You know what hybrid work is? Trabajo semipresencial is basically when you wear a shirt and then you wear underwear. Because they can only see you half of it, okay? So the thing is that I've learned in a scheme that if I come here, I have to dress in a different way, in a special way, right? Nobody will wear here nothing. However, you go in a nudist beach and then you don't think of wearing a scarf, okay? You learn because you prepare a framework. That's the 3rd way, okay? What is the 4th way of learning? It is through emotions, okay? Does anybody here, who is really good in English? Who's really good? Who masters English? A couple, okay? So I'm gonna challenge you, okay? So are you good in Spanish too? Are you good in Spanish? Are you bilingual? Okay, yes? Okay, ¿cómo se dice orzuelo en inglés? How do you say when you have something red in your eye? Something red like that hurts a lot. There on your eyelash or, yeah. Think about that. It's a word that we don't use a lot. You know how I know it? Because I had one. It's called stye, S-T-Y-E, stye. Okay, and I know it because when I lived in England, I had a stye. I went to the hospital. It was a nightmare, and it hurt so much that I will never forget that word. Never. I know it. I'm not forgetting it. Now, think about the last time that you checked a word in the dictionary. And then 2 weeks later, you checked it again. And you said, oh my, I didn't learn it. And 3 weeks later, you went back to the same one. It is so difficult. To be exposed to words doesn't mean that we learn it. When you apply an emotion to it, to the learning process, oh wow. It becomes an experience. And then you anchor the learning. Why is the memory learning so difficult? Because as some of us mentioned here, it requires to unlearn what you had. There is a big learning specialist in Spain called Héctor Ruiz. He's got a great book on learning, and he says that to learn is to forget. Yeah. So those of you that went to college many years ago, how much do you know of your degree now? Nothing. but you're here. And you said, no, don't tell anybody, right? And those of you that are studying now, in 10, 15, 20 years, you will remember nothing, or probably 1%. But it will be useful for you right now, as it was useful for those of you that went to college many years ago. So, of course, learning is unlearning means that you build a skeleton. You build a small framework of thought, of learning, and that's what you apply in your job. No matter what degree you studied, right? You are going to end up with that skeleton. And then based on that, you apply new thoughts. The brain does unlearning. It's not metaphorical. It happens at night when we sleep. And it's called synaptic pruning. We cut the connections that are not useful. Especially teenagers do that, and also early teenagers. They have more brain cells and more connections than we do, but they're not smarter. Some of you will say they have less even, right? Okay, the next one is to leave a legacy. What is to leave a legacy? It is the ability that I have to leave my position better than I found it. Whether I am working here, there will be people, there were people before me in my job, and there will be people after me in my job, okay? If I'm a student, how can I make my degree better? For instance, by suggesting improvements, or by helping my teammates to improve. To lead is to improve others, to improve those around you. One example of a small legacy, which was mentioned at the beginning, is this picture. You can't see well, but it is basically a bunch of people running together. This was a nonprofit organization, an NGO, that I founded in Madrid in 2009. We had homeless people that were practicing sports, running, cycling, and football together as a community. So you see the picture and you don't know, most of them, who is a homeless person, who is a volunteer, who has a great job, who doesn't have a job. That's the power of the mix. That at least for 2 hours, 3-4 times a week, we try to fight labels. That was a beautiful project that got me to learn a lot, okay? To also make a lot of mistakes, okay? And the thing that came next, basically, was the same picture that you saw there. When I became a parent, I had to renounce to that project in order to embrace a new one, which was, for instance, parenting, okay? And I liked it so much that then I became a parent again, and I became a parent again. So now I have 3. And the thing here is that you might create beautiful projects, but that's gonna be the legacy, and you will move on to new things. As I say here, maybe you don't even know now what the future you wants. A lot of people tell you, oh, focus on your goals, but your goals are going to change for sure. My goal was to create this and to impact others, and now, instead of improving the world, I try to take care of my house. As Mother Teresa said, you wanna make the world better? Go and take care of your family. And of course, if I can improve the world, in my job, much better, okay? And your future self maybe might not even share the goals you have right now, okay? This is the continuity paradox. We think that in the future, I will like the same things that I do now. Who knows, right? Maybe you have a professor in your degree that comes with one subject that you just fall in love with, and that changes completely, okay? It could be also a colleague. It could be a talk, who knows? And then, if learning is something continuous, that we never stop, what skills are we going to be needing in the future? I don't have a crystal ball, and nobody does, okay? But one important thing is that we do have reports. This comes from the World Economic Forum in Davos. They gather together and they create what they think will be the tendencies, the trends for the upcoming 5 years. So this, for year 2025, you have a summary, for instance, with analytical thinking. This is conducted every 5 years. Active learning, one of you mentioned that, and learning strategies, okay? You also, for instance, have creativity. Some of you train your creativity with the 10-euro note. Maybe you can try to go to the cafeteria later, and who knows, maybe it works. And these are constantly changing. Think about that. Some are social, some are more intrapersonal, okay? That's about updating the skills. Think about your skills as a software. I turned 41 this year, I know I look 30, thank you, but I'm 41, yeah. And I am now beginning my 4.1 software update. Think about that. Every new year that you turn, you update that software. With what? Maybe it could be a new degree, maybe it's a master's degree, maybe it's a one-day course, maybe it's a book, or maybe it's a conversation. But I want my 4.1 version to be much better than the 4.0, okay? That's evolution, that's improvement. So the big element and the last one that we have is, we mentioned that, is to act. You know, as Monica did before, the only name I know because she came. So we now have a relationship. Monica, I actually bring her to every talk that I give. I always do the same, and then she comes. Tomorrow we are in Alicante, Monica, okay? Don't forget. I'll give you the flight tickets later, okay? So how do we step forward? I'm gonna illustrate this with one example, and it comes from two elements. One, of course, was the Olympics. The Olympics changed Barcelona. If you were here before that, you know it. It was a city that was not facing the sea. It was a city facing the other part. And then it just opened to the sea and to the world, right? And what happened there, as you can see, this is somebody doing diving, as you see, and there was the Sagrada Familia, right? Many years later, you know, still the same, right? So still with cranes, still under construction. Yeah, and I think that's the uniqueness of it, the beauty of it, that we are always, as Sagrada Familia, in our beta version. This is when you say, oh, Pedro, this is the way I am. No, that's the way you am. You can be other things. Don't use, this is the way I am. Don't use authenticity as an excuse for comfort, to not do things. You can always update and be in that beta version. Probably in 10 years, those of you watching this video, maybe if you save it, Sagrada Familia will still have cranes, okay? And that is about a project that is never finished, like learning. I never want to be done with studying. Maybe I'm not going to be doing degrees all my life. I'm in my 3rd degree, by the way. But who knows? I don't want to give up the learning opportunity. And I'm going to show you, this is a summary of the topics that we've discovered. First, the ability and the need to develop our self-awareness. You know, to know a little bit about myself, be a little bit uncomfortable now so I can be more comfortable tomorrow. Be coherent, you know, try to walk the talk, and it's always a challenge to bridge that gap. There's always gonna be a gap. Third, never stop learning, okay? And for that, as we said, we need the humility to, for instance, say, well, I raise my hand and I say, I don't know. I can't learn something if I don't declare that I don't know. That's an act of humility, okay? And it's not easy to raise your hand in class and say, I didn't get that. But that's what makes you understand and makes you know. We all learned in university and high school because some colleagues raised their hands, and we were not brave enough to do it. But we thank them for this. To leave a legacy. How can we leave even small community a little bit better than we found it, okay? To train your willpower, which is way more important than motivation. Am I motivated here? Am I motivated? You don't know. Maybe you think, oh yeah, he is. But you know what? You will never find out, okay? Because I'm using my willpower here to try to give you my best, which you might like or not, but it is my best. Then, to challenge the talent. And how can we challenge it? Through uncomfortable settings. Sometimes it is speaking in public. Sometimes it is sending an email to a person that you don't know, giving your CV, or it could be asking a question in class. Then, to improve people around you. For instance, the question is not, oh, learn, find people that are very smart to learn and get closer to them, or you are worth the value of the 5 people you spend most time with. No, it's not about that. It is, can you learn from anybody that is around you, the one sitting next to you behind, even if they don't have your experience, okay? That's humility, okay? And that is improving. And, the last one is to step forward, okay? When in doubt, say yes. The best things that have happened usually was when I said yes, even to things where I believed that I might not be the best or the suitable one. But if somebody thinks that you are, let's at least try and give that opportunity. I'm gonna show you with an example of a real interview that happened for a job. They were looking for somebody that had all these skills and that was able to be working under a big pressure. So they could have just read CVs, but they decided to put these people in a very peculiar test. I want you to see it and think, what would I do if I were in that situation? How would I cope with this pressure and with these challenges? Let's see it.
What's your management style?
Passionate. Passion.
And what's your biggest weakness?
Being stubborn. Stubborn, I think.
Okay, give me one reason why I should hire you.
Because sports is my passion. I'm really passionate about football.
Really like a football.
When you are looking for a job for an interview,
teeth are brushed.
If you look good, you feel good.
Hi. Hello. How are you?
Pinsen on that out.
Okay, Reeves. Okay. And so you liked it when we were walking hand in hand?
It made me feel comfortable, yes.
Oh, interesting. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for your time, I suppose.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Mr.
bye.
Ross, have a very nice weekend.
Thank you.
Sorry, are you sure?
I'm fine. I'll get a little water in a second.
Okay, you say no.
Stay like this.
If we're talking about money, how much money do you think you would like to have for your position? Last time this happened was at a disco.
The disco day?
Fire and passion or cold and calculated?
I would say cold and calculated because...
Wrong answer.
Fire and passion. Other people get infected by my enthusiasm.
You think I'm getting infected right now?
We need to go. Come, Simon, Mr. Ross.
Okay.
Please. Come on, we need to get going.
Missing a hand here. Can you help us, please? Sir, can you help us, please?
There's a fire or something.
We have a gap here. Sir. Take this one. Hold your weight back. Okay, he's okay. Okay.
What an interview, right? Think about that. This is high pressure, right? So we are the product of the training opportunities that we've had in our lives. So if he behaved like that, it's because probably he was training this way before his first job, okay? Maybe, for instance, if I had practiced a sport or helped my parents in the mornings on Saturday and had to wake up early, nobody needs to instill discipline in me because I've already trained it, okay? So our experience is not the job experience that we have. It's the life experience and how we use the skills and are able to show them in the workplace. Why did he get the job? Why did he land that job? Was he the most knowledgeable one? We don't know. The most empathetic one? I couldn't guarantee that. The only thing that we know is what? He stepped forward. okay? A lot of people don't change or don't step forward because of fear. But in many, many occasions, we don't do it because we are comfortable. Think about that. For the other candidates, it was much more comfortable to be there, not being accountable for what happened later. And he was brave enough to move forward. But did you see his face? He was scared. Bravery, okay, to be brave, is not the opposite of being a coward. He was brave and he was afraid at the same time. To be brave is the opposite of being comfortable. He pushed himself even not knowing what was going to happen. So my message to you is, be brave, walk the fear out, and great things can happen. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. So I believe we do have a few minutes for questions, which I would love. Comments, complaints later, please. So please, I hope that we've created the environment enough for you to, and the good atmosphere for you to express and ask. So I'm all yours. Thank you. Monica, get ready. Because if they don't ask, of course, you're not going to get the book for free. You'll have to, Let's see. There is a microphone, I believe, somewhere for those of you that want to share. It could be a question, a thought, anything you want. Yep.
Hi. Thank you, Pedro, first of all, for your exposition. Yeah. It's wonderful. And I was wondering, when you find a moment in your life when, although you want to improve always, you get stuck, and maybe the version from yourself from 1 year to another 4.1 you said, now today I'm turning 36, so in my 3.6 version, and maybe I see that it's similar to the same last year. When you see that point, how to change, how to do something to improve, to get unstuck from that point?
I think, and I think it's, it's a very good question. When they say that, I hate it so much because who am I to judge the quality of the question? It is a question, right? I've gone through a moment where you might actually think, so every year you get a better version from year before. It might not be the case. And sometimes the better version doesn't mean a higher salary, a better job, a better position. It could actually even mean the opposite. So, for instance, I worked with La Quinta del Buitre, those 5 players from Real Madrid many years ago. And I had a project, and then I quit that project. And I went to work in a context as an assistant at a university. And I became in the lowest hierarchical position of the organization. It was a step backwards for me. So I might think, I'm not updating my software as I thought. I already built experience. I had a position, and now I'm in a worse position than before. But I never tried, because the thought came to my mind, of course. I tried to focus on the task, not so much the result. So what is the task? What am I doing? Okay, I'm in a university environment. Okay, I'm working in a field where I believe I can have growth. So I try to stick to the not yet motto. It is that opportunity is not coming yet, but I am doing the tasks that I need in order to do that. For instance, what tasks? Raise my hand and offer my help to all professors, to all coordinators. So they gave me a position of being, so I was a coordinator, and the director of a program said, hey, I want you to be a co-director. I was paid the same. I was working. I had my assistant job and my co-director job with the same salary. Some of my friends, colleagues said, hey, you're working all these hours, they're not paying you. I was happy because I was feeling fulfilled. After some time, I was appointed director. So when you don't see that evolution, what I would do is think of the task. Am I doing the tasks, the ingredients that I believe can connect me with something that I believe is better? I did have my crisis. I thought of quitting. I thought of going abroad again. I did, yeah. And I was this close from going back to Almeria to live with my parents. 4 days away. 4 days when I got a call. So that foundation that you saw that looks beautiful, I created it because I chose to be unemployed in 2009. Remember the big crisis? I quit a job in the middle of the crisis. So I was crazy. And I almost regretted it. That close. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you, and thank you so much for the talk. I've enjoyed a lot.
Sorry, I don't think it's working. Can you?
It's not
or
working?
Maybe speak
No?
a little louder?
No?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to ask, following this line about stepping forward and something related to what you mentioned about the imposter syndrome. How do we manage this pressure that we have sometimes for improving ourselves and focusing on talent with mental health? Because sometimes, and it's connected also with something you mentioned about the resources. When we are living in a precarious life, we don't have these resources, and we still want to do some things. We have the willpower, we have the motivation, or the, I don't know, the willpower, right?
Yeah.
How can we manage to keep mental health in its place at the same time that we are trying to improve ourselves in a context that is not helping?
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe if I knew, no, it's true. It's easy for me to come and say, focus on this, and then I'm just catching a plane, and then I have, I have all my basic needs covered. I'm a privileged person. I am. But for instance, one of the people in that picture, Aziz, that's his name, he's a still homeless person. He said, oh, you know what? After running, I have a lot of stiffness in my muscles. And I said, why? And he said, because I never get a hot shower. And I said, well, I've never thought that actually, if you don't get hot showers, your muscles become stiff. You never think about that because you never go through that. It is impossible to empathize with what I don't know. How to empathize with somebody who is struggling, and this gives me or takes me to a big point. You know when they say, get away from toxic people? You know the term a toxic person? I hate it with all my heart, right? I hate it even more than some Mr. Wonderful coffee mugs. If you want to make it, if you want to make it, you can make it. No, I know so many people want to make it to here, and they can't, or maybe to here, right? So no, anything is possible. No, there are many things that are impossible. But it's good to explore the limits, and maybe sometimes you can exceed them. I think that the issue with mental health is that we ask a lot of people to, especially organizations, I work with many companies, and I see that in the organization world, we ask people to focus on their well-being, right? We ask people to be engaged, to be committed, but what are we doing for them? So the big problem with well-being starts in the top, not in the bottom. And it is, I have to give you the resources, at least the basic ones, right? So we have to move from the concept of engagement. People need to be engaged. No, people need to feel safe, that they are in a safe environment where they can grow. Okay, so well-being is way more needed and way more important than engagement. If you have well-being, you will be engaged. You don't need to motivate somebody whose well-being is good. Okay, but it is important to know that some people, and we are in a position of privilege. And we also need to be aware of that. Sometimes we ask people for something that they can't give. But I do remember when I've had positions where I was not as fortunate as I am now, and I tried to stick to the small things. But of course, eat healthy. How much does it cost to eat healthy, right? Let's think about that. We can all, not all of us can afford that. Absolutely. It needs to be part of the conversation.
Thank you, Pedro. Thank you
Thanks.
for your ideas and for your presentation. Talking about the self-awareness issue, sometimes I believe that this excessive self-awareness can lead you to be stuck in your failures and in the negative parts of life because you are doing a lot of thinking. How can we regulate this process of self-awareness to focus on the positive parts of life and your daily tasks.
Thank you. Think of all the little tasks that you do today. Think of any day. You do 80 things in one day. 79 are success situations. Think about that. You woke up this morning. You didn't fall from the bed, did you? Did anybody? You didn't fall from bed. If you shaved, you didn't cut or something. You took a shower. You didn't sleep when you left the shower. If you drove, you didn't have a car accident, right? If you took a metro, it came more or less on time, and you got here, right? All of that. You eat, and the food doesn't fall. You don't vomit. So many small success moments. But there's one thing, one problem, one thing, one concern that you have, just one out of those 80, and then you go to bed thinking about what? The 79 success moments, that one thing. That one thing. It's so unfair. If you think about it from an objective point of view, if you, as a scientist, you got data, 79 positive items, but outperforms the other 79. There is a theory called the good golf shot. And people that start playing golf, that's what they do. They do the opposite. They take 80 balls, they hit the balls in the driving range, and they go back the first day, and they say to their friends, oh, look, today, I hit, oh, what a shot. I hit one. They don't talk about the 79 bad shots because the only one they remember is the success moment. The best way to do that is, when I finish my day, let's do a small retrospective. I do it with my kids, not every day, but I do it sometimes. And I share, what is the best thing that happened to me today? For instance, say, you know what, I went to Barcelona. Sometimes I have a lot of options. Other days, I really struggle to find something good that happened in that day. But I make the effort. And it makes me go to bed with a positive thought, okay? To be able to face at least the day with a better one. But definitely, it is a big challenge, absolutely.
Maybe we have time for one last question before we close up. Anyone?
And
yes?
There's one over here.
Last question, thank you.
Thank you. I have noted, because my English is not really good, so I searched in the traductor too, sorry. Well, truly we have to stay in the positive things, as you said, because if we stay in the positive things and we search everyday things as gifts, I think that we will live in an optimistic way and a positive way, and that's really nice. But my question is more about how we have to know what we really want as persons, each one of us, and not what is expected to us to achieve as the parents that have their expectations, or maybe the community, the society, how we have to do it.
Yeah. Some people, and when I told you it took me 20 years to find out what I really wanted, I knew the ingredients. I liked sports, I liked people, I liked business, and I liked languages. I knew those ingredients, but I didn't know what my job would look like. I have friends that are going now, through this middle life crisis. You turn 40 some, and then you're like, okay, I've done all these things in my life, but I don't know if I were doing them because I like them or because it was expected of me to do that. Especially, for instance, relationship with your parents, the people around you, people that are really generous. And now they get a little bit more healthy selfish, as I said at the beginning, and look a bit into you. I think that going through a personal development process is essential. Sometimes you can do guided. You know that when you are 40, the trend is to go to the psychologist, right? And there are two types of people, those that have been to a psychologist and those who will be going to a psychologist, right? At some point. But sometimes it is also being brave enough to go around people and ask for feedback. For instance, now there are great books that help us think about the things we like, okay? For instance, there's a book that maybe some of you know, the Business Model Canvas, has a second book, which is called Business Model U. Business Model U. And it is about creating your own business model based on the skills that you have, based on your passions. You do activities in the book that walk you through career paths and jobs that might be fulfilling for you. Think about that. When I was 20, I didn't know there was a job called speaker, corporate trainer. I had no idea that this would be my job. And you know what? I have no idea what I'll be doing in 10 years. But I do know the ingredients that I want. Maybe I am, I don't know, on a TV show, or maybe writing the script of a movie, who knows? But I dare at least to venture. And also, being around people that have different projects helps you to see reality. The way I am in this job, because I saw people that there was a job they had. I can't have a job if I don't know that job exists. So moving around, being with eyes open, helped me to see different realities. Why don't we have women in many positions? Because we had never had women in those jobs. Yesterday, 2 politicians that are women were asked if they were meeting together because they were women. It was the Prime Minister of Finland and the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And they were asked this question: oh, the reason of your meeting, is it because are you the same age and because you have the same gender? Think about that. If we see that there is a woman who is the Prime Minister of a country, there will be more women Prime Ministers in the future. So the best way to know options is to see that they are real. And it does take time, yeah.
Wow. I hope you really are taking something home today. I am, definitely.
Thank you. 10 euro note.
Thank you so much, Pedro.
Thank
what
you.
a pleasure to have
Thank
you
you.
here.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks so much.
Well, and thank you for spending the time with us. I hope our LinkedIn people are still there. Thank you also for being connected. Now we have coffee, so no Heineken, sorry, Pedro. But we have coffee, so please join us and you can still talk to him if you wish to do so. Thank you again. Bye.